behalf of the Medical Graduates Association, I'm delighted to welcome you to the second event in our new 2021 Distinguished Graduate Award Series, and thank you very much for taking the time to join us. But before we start the formal proceedings, I would of course like to acknowledge the challenges you are all encountering in your many and varied work settings as we head into year 2 of living through this pandemic. I would especially like to thank you for the incredible efforts you're making to prevent the virus spreading, to care for those with the infection, and to drive research into more effective treatments and development of vaccines. Here in UCD, we are so proud of how the School of Medicine research community has risen to challenges posed by the pandemic through testing at the NVRL, contact tracing, genomic sequencing, all complemented by clinical research with our hospital partners. In this regard, I'd like to especially acknowledge a study titled Whole Genome Sequencing of SARS-CoV-2 in the Republic of Ireland during waves 1 and 2 of the pandemic, which was published in late January. This study was conducted across 4 of our partner hospitals and highlights the importance of COVID-19 genomic surveillance to inform where the virus has originated, how it changes over time, and how it impacts on health. I'd also like to highlight the launch of Accelerate, the new EU-wide vaccine clinical trial network of 21 countries tasked with accelerating the trialling of COVID-19 vaccines on Wednesday, the 17th of February. Accelerate will connect all stakeholders involved in vaccine development and provide a platform for clinical trial design and conduct. Essentially, this network now constitutes a rapid response single entry point for all stakeholders, from public health authorities to vaccine developers, to address respective needs and kickstart phase 2 and 3 vaccine trials. But most notably, the Irish Accelerate partners are UCD and NUIG, with Paddy Malin, Professor of Microbial Diseases, UCD School of Medicine, Director of UCD Centre for Experimental Pathogen Host Research, and Consultant in Infectious Diseases at St Vincent's University Hospital, as National Coordinator for Ireland. So again, we thank all of you sincerely, especially our researchers, for the immense efforts you're making to lead us on the roadmap to recovery and to a world where COVID-19 exists in the normal landscape of human disease. So on to the business of the evening. We're here because of our Medical Graduates Association and to acknowledge our graduates' contribution to medical education and practice around the world. As alumni of our school, you are our ambassadors around the world, and no doubt proud of UCD's heritage in providing medical education since 1855, the school's strong presence and bright future. Today, the association works in close partnership with the UCD Alumni Development Office to offer a platform so that we can all honour that tradition and keep in touch with each other across the world, have a lifelong link with UCD and an opportunity to influence the school's future. So please consider that the MGA is your association. And on to our MGA Distinguished Graduate Award Series. These awards are presented to outstanding alumni in recognition of lifelong achievements in medical education, research and/or clinical practice, in appreciation of the drive, leadership and commitment to make a difference in society at home and abroad shown by these outstanding alumni, to celebrate the success and contribution of our most distinguished alumni worldwide. Traditionally, these awards are presented on a face-to-face basis in the O'Reilly Hall on the UCD campus. However, given COVID-19, we had to take a decision before Christmas to move to running these awards as a series of 3 virtual events. But our aim is still to offer you the usual reunion and memory type feel as we present these awards on a virtual basis. I'd now like to introduce you to Sister Marian Scena, who is the second recipient in this 2021 MGA Distinguished Graduate Award Series, and to Dr. Bernie Mangan, who will interview Sister Marian. Dr. Mangan is a retired consultant psychiatrist and former clinical director of St John of God Hospital here in Dublin, and currently a board member of the hospital. Dr. Mangan is also class rep for her UCD class of 1975. Dr. Mangan will introduce Sister Marian and give you some background on her wonderful career to date as a medical missionary of Mary in Tanzania before the interview. But before I hand over to Dr. Mangan, I would like to say a few words about the Medical Missionaries of Mary. The Medical Missionaries of Mary Order was founded by Mother Mary Martin in Nigeria in 1937 and now serves in 12 countries around the world by sisters from 19 countries who are trained in a variety of healthcare related professions. The Order is committed to health promotion, care of the sick, and community development. Their activities in community development in Angola, Benin, Brazil, Honduras, Kenya, Malawi, Nigeria, South Sudan, Tanzania, Uganda, and the USA have always involved local people in decision-making about their own health and the provision of clean water, sanitation, and improved nutrition. And in all of their activities, they join resources with others by passing on skills to local people and fostering true human development. To date, 27 medical missionaries of Mary have qualified from UCD School of Medicine. 12 of these sisters are now deceased. The 15 sisters who are still with us are working in surgery, obstetrics and gynecology, endocrinology, general medicine, and public health, with some of the sisters also now retired. I'll now hand over to Dr. Mangan.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the UCD medical graduates, and in particular to the class of 1975. It's a real pleasure for me as a classmate of Marian, and my name is Dr. Bernie Mangan, to introduce you to Dr. Marian Scena, medical missionary of Mary, and to talk to her before she's presented with her Distinguished Graduate Award about her 45 years active medical service and still going. She's already had 37 years in 3 Tanzanian medical missionary hospitals. And in more recent times, I say in the last 8, 9, 10 years, she's been working on a new project as clinical care coordinator with the Palliative Care Program, community-based, out of Faraja Center in Singida province or municipality in Tanzania. So we're going to chat and talk about her life and times. And just to set the map, I guess, she's in the center of, right in the middle of Tanzania. Tanzania is a very large Eastern African country, bounded on the east coast by the Indian Ocean and the large city of Dar es Salaam, and on the west coast by a number of, unfortunately, very troubled nations: Burundi, Rwanda, Congo, Uganda to the north, and also then down further south, Zambia, Malawi, and Mozambique. And to the north, of course, anybody who's been in Africa on nice safaris would have been to Kenya. And the Kenya-Tanzanian border is well known for its wildlife and its bird life, which we'll hear about later from Marian, I've no doubt. There are also 3 very significant pieces of water on the western boundary of Tanzania: Lake Victoria to the north, and then Lake Tanganyika to the west, and to the south, Lake Malawi. So lots of water, Marian, lots of water around you. And unfortunately, I'm sure you get lots of rain too. But on the other hand, it can get very dry and difficult, and the terrain is challenging. So that's the setting that Marian and many of her medical missionary colleagues have worked in, working in very rural areas of Tanzania, right over to the Burundian and Rwandan border. So we'll maybe take you back first, Marian, before we start talking about what you're doing now. And if you could tell us about UCD in those early days. We were fascinated with you from the word go, because you were this person from the United States of America, from Connecticut, and then from Colorado, and you had come to Ireland to study medicine, and you already knew where you were going to end up. We were fascinated by that. How could you know at that stage where you would go to work? So tell us a bit about what it was like for you arriving. I know you arrived a year earlier before you started college. Tell us what it was like for you arriving into a pre-med class of mainly late teenagers, Irish teenagers. What was it like for you?
Thank you, Bernie. It's great to be here tonight and be able to share some of these memories and some of these things. I knew when I joined the Medical Missionaries of Mary, or the MMMs, that I was likely to spend my life in Africa, at least at what we called in those days foreign missions. And that's what I felt really called to and drawn to. And that's really why I joined the MMM. So I felt the call to be a missionary, also to be a doctor. And not too many American women in those days were training to be doctors. It's different now, but that was 46 years ago now. And I thought I might like to be a sister. I wasn't as sure about that. So I wanted to explore it. Well, I joined and eventually in Boston, Massachusetts, USA, and eventually was sent to Drogheda, to the mother house of the MMMs. And I was eventually asked if I would like to do medicine. I was told since Vatican II Council, what did I want to do? And I thought, I've spent 5 years trying not to think what I wanted to do, trying to find God's will for me. But I was told, what did I want to do? And I said, well, when I joined, I wanted to be a doctor. I don't think I do now. It takes too long. It'll be a distraction to my prayer life. I think I'd rather do something shorter. Well, I said it to the wrong person who was also a doctor and was our regional superior, deceased Sister Maura Donahue, who many of you have in various different contexts. She said it was not the thing to say to Maura. Anyhow, she challenged me on it. And lo and behold, she sent me off to the labor ward, sent me off to the theater to see what I thought. And when I was in theater seeing a cesarean section, I was just captivated. I said, oh, the interest is there. Yes, this is, I think, for me. So my marks were okay. I was able to I think it was by matriculation in those days. And I found myself joining the class in 1969. I had been 1 year in Ireland working in the maternity hospital for most of that time as a kind of receptionist. Well, I knew I was the only sister in my class, and I was about 6 years older than everybody. And I thought, I'm going to be with these people 6 years. I need to take this very slowly. So I didn't tell anybody who I was or where I was. And it took, I think, it was about 3 weeks before a girl I had gotten kind of friendly with told me one day in zoology class, do you know there's a nun in our class? And I said, well, yes. Do you know who she is, Marian? I said, well, yes, I do. She said, who? I said, me. Well, that was just, so by the end of the afternoon, everybody knew. But by that stage, I think people had gotten to know me a bit. And in the old days of convent schools, that I think a lot of the girls had kind of negative ideas about sisters. And that's why I kind of went slowly. But I must say, I felt I integrated with everybody, and I really enjoyed medical school. I absolutely enjoyed it. It was challenging, it was hard work. The educational system was very different from the American system, and I found it very difficult not having continuous assessment in those days. It's all changed now, but having one exam at the end of the year and your whole year being based on that, I found it extremely difficult, and I was sick with mono glandular fever just before. I almost didn't do my pre-med exam, and I thought, if I don't do this exam and I don't pass, I'm giving this up. I'm not going to repeat this year like we would have had to do in those days. But fortunately, I made it through. So the rest was easier to speak of anyway. So.
And tell me about then your training when you got to the other end of all our kind of preclinical and early clinical years. What were the things and the people and the experiences that you felt would equip you to go to Africa?
Well, I knew where I was headed. I mean, I hadn't been there, but I had read a lot and talked to many of our sisters, so I had a pretty good idea what a doctor's life in a rural hospital in Tanzania or Africa would be like. I didn't know I'd be going to Tanzania. I thought it was most likely to be Africa. So I was trying to gear myself in a clinical way, because I knew we would not have a lot of backup. They had x-rays and a very simple basic lab, but I didn't think we'd have much more. In those days, we had no ultrasound. We didn't get ultrasound till mid-1990s. I tried my best to see as many patients, examine as many patients as possible, and that, I think, really stood to me. And then I had the opportunity to go to Tanzania for 3 months before my final med year. And So the person I think who
will you go
struck
on
me
then to your internship and your SHO year in Drogheda? Tell us a little bit about what you learned from people there and what experiences you carried with you.
Okay. I interned in Drogheda, and my 6 months of medicine, we were we had 3 months, Dr. Costello, who's deceased, and that was excellent experience in medicine, general, but specialized enough, but general, in general, it was really general medicine. And then my surgery, I had 6 months. It was excellent. And I got some experience. I spent as much time as I could in the theater because I loved surgery. I felt attracted and drawn to surgery. And so I had a wonderful intern year. And went on for the MMMs going to Africa in those days. After internship, we also did 6 months obstetrics, gynecology, and usually did the DRCO, and 6 months pediatrics for the DCH. And again, got very good experience in both of them. Both of them worked with wonderful consultants. And I felt in those days, the Drogheda was not super specialized, but it covered general medicine, surgery, obstetrics, and pediatrics. And I felt I got a very well-rounded background, and that had prepared me, as far as I could tell, for what would lie ahead in Africa.
And when, most people would consider, if you're doing surgery, you would have to proceed and do a qualification in surgery, do your years in a surgical placement. Did you find that when you arrived in Africa that you had sufficient expertise to start a career with that varied background of surgery, medicine, obs and gynae and pediatrics?
I felt I had a good background. I was very fortunate in my first mission in Drogheda. I was there for 5 years to work with a Dutch gynecologist who also really was a surgeon. He did everything. He was like a mechanics. He did orthopedics. He was excellent. I just attached myself and tagged after him everywhere, and plucked up enough courage to ask him to scrub for everything he did, day and night. And then got enough courage up after seeing an operation to ask him if could I do it and would he supervise me? Because what would I do when he left? Who would I learn from? So he did, and I learned an awful lot from him. We also had the flying doctors from MREF in Nairobi who came down to us in those days, first every 3 months and later every 2 months. And they were specialists, and they saw my interest in surgery, and they encouraged me and supervised me and would say, now you're competent to do that. Don't be afraid. And so I started doing hysterectomies and prostatectomies as needed, and hernias. But most of the major surgery was trauma, complicated fractures and things, and acute abdomens. We had a lot of volvulus, and I remember one time having to do 4 bowel resections in 10 days. That was the most ever. I mean, so it was quite busy in Drogheda Hospital. It was a district hospital.
Sorry, Marian, was there any other source of education? Did you go to anywhere else to take other courses, or did you come back to Ireland or to the US? Did you go anywhere else during that time?
Okay, the only thing I did was tropical medicine. I did the intensive 3-month course in Liverpool in the end of 1982, which was excellent, after my first tour in Africa. So I had an awful lot of experience. So it wasn't just theory going into the field. It was kind of practice put on. I had learned an awful lot of the practical material in the field and then studied it afterwards. That was very, very valuable. But I did not spend any other time after those 2 years after qualifying. It was all on the field, really on the field.
With all that, trauma surgery and acute abdomens and obstetric complications, were there any particular challenges in your surgical career that stand out for you?
There were lots of challenges. Sometimes we had, people gored by animals, and lots of things, lots of things. Maybe I can tell you just about the one, the most, um, the biggest operation, I suppose. Our anesthetic machine was an emo machine that used ether, and sometimes it could use halothane. We had a halothane machine, but we didn't use it often because of the worry of liver damage. But I had, when I was in Kabanga Hospital in the western part of Tanzania, we had a 25-year-old man come in who had, he said, fallen on his spear. Now, I think he must have been a thief, and somebody speared him in his back. It went in left side, and it had happened 3 days before. When he came in, he had a totally rigid abdomen and extremely high fever, but he was still talking. And so anyway, examining him, I discovered he had a right lung full of fluid and a rigid abdomen. And I said, this man I think he's got a perforation. And because of where the spear went in, I was just afraid he had a perforation in his liver. I had never had to operate on a liver before, and I was really frightened. But, and also I had never had to do a thoracotomy before. And like I say, our emo machine, the anesthetist had to ventilate constantly. It was not automatic ventilation. And he liked his little drink. And especially if he was called at night, you were never sure he was in good spirits from a little bit of alcohol. But anyhow, I started at that stage. We put him to sleep, and I read Hamilton Bailey's Emergency Surgery to see how to approach this problem between chest and abdomen. And anyway, it said, put him on his left side, put the hand over the back of the neck, and take out the 9th rib and proceed. Well, I did it. But before the first night when we did it, he started throwing ectopics wildly. And I said, wait, to Thomas, the anesthetist, wake him up, Thomas. I don't want him to die in the table. So he woke him up, and Sister Dr. Maria Borda, who's still in Tanzania, who had just come as a newly qualified doctor, was assisting me. And she said, I think we've got some lignocaine. Let's put him up on a drip. Well, I'd forgotten any cardiology I knew at that stage because we never saw it, those kind of cases. So I left her. So she did that. We put him up on a lignocaine drip overnight. It settled him, and we had to do it in the morning. It was about a 4.5-hour surgery. He had a perforation, fortunately, through the posterior wall at the hepatic flexure. And it missed the liver. I don't know how it missed the liver, and it missed the spinal cord, and it came out the other side. So we repaired a diaphragm. I'd never done that. I'd never done a chest. Just put a chest drain, did a surgical toilet, stitched him up, and then proceeded with the peritoneal cavity, which was, he had, I think, a couple of liters of pus and feces. So we did that, and I thought he wouldn't survive, but I thought, at this stage, I've had 6 years of experience in Africa. Let me try. He's going to die if I do nothing. And that's how I got most of my surgery, was doing trauma and emergencies, knowing that if I didn't do something, the person was definitely going to die. Well, let me try and see if I can help this person. So anyhow, but this guy, I didn't think would survive. Well, the next morning I went in to say good morning, and I said, how are you? He said, I'm fine. I was shocked to death. It took him about 3 weeks. He got a bad wound infection, which I wasn't too surprised about. He walked out in 3 weeks. Fine. Of course, he was basically a healthy 25-year-old. That, I think, was the most, I never had to do that. Dr. Borda said to me, gosh, I would have said, Kwaheri, goodbye. I wouldn't have even attempted it. I said, well, I wouldn't have at your stage either if I was new in Africa. But I've had 6 years of a lot of experience, and I thought, let's give this man a chance towards life. So it was kind of exhilarating to see him recover. I never had to do it again. I had never had to do another.
Goodness.
Yeah. Yeah.
That must have been a very proud moment to see this
Well,
gentleman
it
walk
was,
out
I must say, amazing,
alive?
amazing, and grateful moment. Extremely grateful. I mean, I'm telling you, I never had a surgical. I never had a residency or anything in surgery. I had to depend an awful lot on God and on Hamilton Bailey and Farquharson's books because they were excellent about operative surgery. So
Did you have any other very proud moments?
many. I couldn't begin. I was trying to think, and to talk about them, I would go on for hours, which we don't have time. So just to
Okay,
say,
we'll hold
I
that for
do
our next
feel
reunion then.
I'm very grateful for I think I've had a very interesting and happy life. There's been certainly many challenges and sad moments too, but I must say I have loved life as it has unfolded for me, and I have no regrets, no regrets, and I'm still
And
enjoying it.
what was the most enjoyable period of your career?
I think as a doctor, it's seeing patients get better, you know,
Yeah.
and even now, when I don't see patients get better, well, rarely some of our patients do get better, our palliative patients rarely, but even seeing them prepared to go to God, I find that being instrumental in helping them, I find that wonderful.
Yeah.
I just
Is
it's
this
very
an
precious.
interesting transition in your career that you have had all this amazing surgical, medical, obstetric, pediatric experience, and now at the latter end of your career, you are now helping people to go towards the end of their life, towards death. That's a very challenging career move.
Well, yeah, a few people said to me, even some of my close friends, Marian, you'll never survive not doing surgery. You'll be totally bored. I have not missed surgery at all. I have enjoyed so much palliative care. Um, I'm very grateful for all the years I had, and I really enjoyed my years. Everything was so interesting, and that's one reason I didn't specialize. I enjoyed everything in hospital medicine. You know, the even the medicine, which wasn't my biggest forte. TB work was so interesting here. HIV work is very interesting. Pediatrics and everything in obstetrics, everything was just so interesting. But I find palliative care almost as interesting, if not even more so, because it's so holistic with the medical, psychological, spiritual, and social side, the palliative care. Um, it's so holistic that to have time to be with patients and listen to patients and see how life is affecting them when they're faced with life limiting and life threatening conditions. And to be able to accompany them with our three nurses that we have in palliative care, uh, it's a tremendous privilege to me. And I absolutely love it. I mean, we have our sad moments, but I mean, life here is a preparation for if for persons of faith is a preparation for life everlasting, and to help a person come to that point, and especially to be able to treat their pain so that they don't despair out of pain and uh, the difficulties that face a life-threatening disease. Um, to me,
Can I
this
can I ask you
is
can I ask you, Mary, to talk a bit about that whole issue of pain and pain
mm,
management, and the difficulties and the challenges that I know you've had in procuring and setting up a solid delivery of oral morphine, and also the very real challenges around epilepsy in Africa, the poor treatment and the unavailability of consistent supply chain of
mhm,
medications. How have you managed that whole thing around pain management and the morphine and the concerns people have about the use of morphine?
um, there's first of all, even doctors and nurses, many of them have never heard of palliative care or hospice. So a big part when we were starting our program was awareness raising, conscientization about palliative care, what it is, and what it isn't. And we spent until in the beginning, because we had no patients, the very beginning, myself and I had one nurse, Mama Mina Kimashalo, and she said to me, she was doing HIV work, and she said, I told her at one stage, I was interested in, I felt drawn to that we had a need for people who did not have HIV and had no care, terminal care. I felt really drawn to do something for this. She said, if you do it, doctor, tell me, because I would like to join you. And she did. And she's still with us now. She's a woman in her early 70s. And she's been wonderful. So we had to go and meet the village leaders, the government leaders, in the various wards, parts of the municipality. We started in the town because we said we didn't have much money. It's like a pilot project to really see if there is a need for this. I thought there was a need. I talked to people in the regional hospital in Singida, and they said, well, we have nothing for people with cancer and things like that. We said to them, go home. We can't help you. There's nothing we can do. And they might be given a few paracetamol. And I thought, oh my gosh, how terrible. If you're faced with this, a person being faced with a life-threatening illness, and then to have no help medically, psychically, spiritually, I hope there was help. Socially, there was a lot of ignorance. People were afraid, and sometimes they'd hide away people with diseases, especially if they had terrible wounds and ulcers and things like that. So anyway, we went around. We started in 10 of the wards, and we went around to the government leaders, because you have to get the cooperation of the government. We went to the regional hospital. We spoke to the doctors, the nurses who knew nothing about it. And we said, I know you're really interested in curing. I love to cure too, but there comes a time when some people are not going to be cured. Then what do? Well, tell them to go home. We can't do anything to help them, meaning we can't cure them. So I thought, well, you can't cure them, but that doesn't mean help them. So that's how we started. And then we went to religious leaders as well, because the religious leaders know a lot of the sick people because of the spiritual care. So that was our three-pronged aim: government leaders, religious leaders, and healthcare personnel. So we started as a pilot project in 10 with 16 wards. Now there's 18 wards. And we stayed that way for the first 5 years before we expanded out to another area. Because I knew if we expanded to the areas that were farther away, some of our villages are 25 kilometers. So to go and to come, and it takes a lot more time, a lot more money for fuel and all that kind of thing. So I had to look for donors, because in the beginning we were going to charge people a nominal fee. But what I found is people who needed palliative care, many of them had gone from hospital to hospital looking for a cure. And doctors did not want to tell them, I'm sorry, this is not curable. I think we were never prepared for palliative care in medical school. And I don't think they are here in this country either, because our emphasis is always on curing. So the doctors are not comfortable talking about death and talking about, you're not going to get better, I'm sorry. And I always say to people, Mama, I would love to cure you. I wish I could cure you, but it's not possible. So the next best thing is we care for you, we treat your pain, and help you stay with your family as long as God life. And that's kind of the
how do you get around, Marian?
way we approach
Can you tell
things.
me about how you get around your all those districts? Because travel 25 kilometers seems nothing in Ireland, traveling on our roads, but in African roads, that's not an easy journey. How do you get around? How do you manage that?
Well, we depend on a car or a pickup. We have had a pickup since 2000, since we started, but we share it with the 3 other programs in Faraja at the moment. And we're in the process of getting another one. But just to say that if we used public transport or walked nearby patients, we would not be able to see nearly as many patients in a day. Sometimes we see anywhere from about 5 to 14 patients a day. And some of them can be at quite distances. We try to save money and to save time. We try and see patients on one side of the town on one day and other side of the town, so we don't keep driving back and forward and wasting time and money and fuel.
Marian, as we had hoped we would be meeting in real life in May 2020, and at that occasion we had hoped to do some fundraising for you, but we became aware that you were in urgent need of a new vehicle for your work in the community. And following hearing from you, I got my class colleagues to make contributions towards the purchase of a new Toyota Land Cruiser for your work in Faraja and Singida. And it's with absolute delight you have told us that you recently have completed the fundraising and you have ordered from Japan your new Toyota Land Cruiser. And we wish you safe travel and many years to come in your community, raising awareness and treating and encouraging young Tanzanian healthcare workers to do this wonderful work with you and for you into the future. And thank you very much for that wonderful fundraising effort.
I'd just like to say thank you. I couldn't have done it without my classmates and some of my friends, both many of them in Ireland and some of them in the USA. And I just didn't think it was going to be possible. And we managed to collect the equivalent of 27,000 euro. So that is no small thing. And I would just like to thank everybody who participated. I haven't individually thanked. I said I would wait until it arrives. But we heard it's being produced in April. We'll leave Japan in May and should get here towards the end of June. And so I'll be sure we have pictures and everything and be able to thank people properly. But I'm very grateful to my classmates who had it possible. It's really wonderful. Thank you so much.
Tell me about that role as a medical missionary, keeping the funds coming to keep your programs going.
Okay, since I joined them, one of the things we learned how to do was to beg. MMM goes to the place where the need is greatest and where other people, like, say, if you were married with families to go to some of these rural areas, you wouldn't have had schools. So it's very suitable for us who do not have families to go to these areas. We have our community back up with our MMM sisters, and so we get that support. We get that professional and that kind of family support too. So, but begging has been very important, and I'm really, you can't do anything without, I mean, much of my home leave since I've joined MMM. I'm in MMM now for 50, how many? I joined in 1960. So I'm about 57 years, 58 years this year. When I go home, I speak to groups, I talk to people, I talk to my family about what I'm doing. They catch the bug to want to help Africa, and they help. It's never in huge amounts, except that I must say, I mean, the small ones we rely on a lot, like family and friends. But we do have big donors. And one of our biggest ones, we're in the middle, we finished the first year of a big mission care project, which is funded by the taxpayers of Ireland. So it is a project that is multi-sectoral. Palliative care is one of them. HIV testing is one of them. And human trafficking. We have a anti-human trafficking, counter-human trafficking awareness raising program since 2017 in Faraja. So this Mission Care project embraces all of those. And it's a very big thing. And it helps us with salaries. It helps us care for patients. It helps us with transport. But it's a lot of work. any work with any donor because you have to be accountable. So a lot of our time is spent in writing reports, gathering statistics, and so it's necessary. It's like I've said to people, why they said to me, well, why do you spend your time at home talking to groups? I said, it's like our bread and butter. If we don't have the funds, we can't help the people, the local people. To get the funds, they have to meet somebody who knows something about it and is involved. So I see it as a very important part of my missionary life. If I'm out there and there's nobody helping, supporting me and all the people I work with, all the MMMs I work with, then we couldn't do anything. So we work together. It's the body of Christ, the community of God, the church. And there's a place for everybody. Not everybody's expected to go like I do, but not everybody's expected to stay at home either.
How do you excite young medical students and doctors to follow in your footsteps into Africa? And is there a good career there for, say, young Irish graduates? Or is there a good experience there for medical students?
Since HIV came on the scene, and, late 80s, early 90s, I know a lot of parents are afraid to have their kids come to Africa because they're afraid they're going to get infected with HIV. So I'm not sure how to advise people. If somebody really, I think it's a wonderful opportunity. And it's a wonderful opportunity for students to hone their clinical skills. I used to say to them, concentrate on clinical skills. Do not see what medications we're using, what drugs we're using. The way we do this, it's going to be different in Ireland. And I don't want you to learn something that you're going to be told afterwards is crazy. We have reasons for doing things the way we do them under the economic and social situation that we live in. But you'll never go wrong concentrating on your clinical skills. And I know it certainly stood to me for my final med exams. I had gotten wonderful clinicals, feeling spleens, listening to murmurs, feeling livers, all kinds of lumps and wounds and gross osteomyelitis and all this kind of things that, I don't think you see too much nowadays anyway. So it was a wonderful clinical experience for those students, and they testified to that. They said that. I'm not sure nowadays if somebody has a real bent that way. I think it can really help them, but I'm not sure how to advise young people nowadays in that scene.
Marian, we've talked a lot about very serious matters, and I just want to bring you to what is it that keeps you going? What helps you in your moments of challenge? And how do you relax? Do you relax? Do you take time to play your guitar now like you used to in college and when we would gather for reunions? Tell us about that. And I want to hear about your bird watching as well.
Oh, okay. Well, music has always been very important to me, both singing and playing the guitar. I still do it. Not as much socially. When you're in a different cultural context, it hasn't got the same meaning as it would have, But we do it for our MMM celebrations. We do it for our liturgy, praying together. So I think I play the guitar just about every day of the year. And I play sometimes, not as much as I would like to sometimes, to just enjoy it myself and do it myself. I love walking. We live on the side of a lake. We're very blessed, and it's a birder's paradise. I got very interested in bird watching, and Tanzania is very rich and diverse. There's over 1,150 species of birds in Tanzania. I've seen about 650, which is maybe around half, but and I find it's takes your mind totally off any other problems when you see the beauty that is around. I enjoy it. I enjoy walking, and walking and birding go together very, very much. So No, I do have time to relax, and I do enjoy it.
Marian, I think we're coming to the end of our interview, and I suppose it's time to hand over to the questions. I'm sure there are maybe some of our class or other years who want to ask you questions about your interesting time and your career. Thank you so much for that. And I know that you have followed a long line of wonderful, brave medical missionaries. And I want tonight to say thank you to all of them for their contribution and your contribution to Tanzania and other parts of Africa, and I know South America as well. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mangan. My name is Jane Curtin. I'm with the communications team at the School of Medicine. Sister Marian, some questions have come in during the interview. I'd like to put those to you now. So the first question is from Moira Slevin, and Moira congratulates you on the magnificent contribution you've made to the healthcare of the people of Tanzania and the fact that you're currently providing palliative care in an area with a population of over 200,000 people. But Moira would like to specifically ask if you've ever experienced feelings of helplessness or hopelessness in the face of such an incredible challenge, and especially during the pandemic.
Thank you. Yes, helplessness all the time, frequently, very frequently. But also a knowledge and an awareness that I'm not alone. And I've felt since the beginning, God's given me these skills to be used for other people, and let me do what I can. I can't help everybody. Let me help who I can and trust God for the rest. Hopelessness, never really. Sometimes you can get a bit depressed, sometimes with overwhelming problems that are around. But I must say, I've never felt hopeless. I suppose by nature I'm a bit of an optimist. I think I'm a realist too, but I can usually find something positive and try and work on that and find some kind of a solution or some way of dealing with the problems I've had to deal with.
Thank you. Maura's second question relates to the fact that the Faraja Palliative Care Centre is a community-based healthcare service, which she suspects you operate with very limited resources. So she'd like to just ask about whether that service is in any way government funded, or are you also you're dependent on fundraising? And if so, have donations been impacted by the pandemic? And I think you've covered that somewhat in the interview with Dr. Mangan, but if you'd like to expand on it.
Just to say, we have a memorandum of understanding with the regional hospital, which is in Singida town, which is where our center is based, although our work is done throughout the municipality. And they provide morphine, oral morphine solution, which is what we here in Africa use. It's a medication that has to be a form of morphine that has to be given every 4 hours, day and night. But it's very effective, extremely effective. They provide that free. And at times they have also helped us with staff. But apart from that, we are basically on our own looking for fund and have to run it looking for funds ourselves. So as I think I've already covered that enough to say, that's a big part of anything we do as medical missionaries of Mary is finding the funding to be able to do it. And that's where we depend on people at home and people all over the place. Because in general, the people we work with are unable to provide everything that they need with money, and that most of them are poor. Certainly by our Western standards, most of them are quite poor. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question is in from Helena Daly. And Helena would like to ask you, given your extraordinary life in the service of others, if you had your time again, would you do it again or do things differently?
I can't really say. I think I would do it the way I have no regrets. I don't think I'd do it any differently. The way things have happened, even times of suffering, and that they've all had a place in growth and um, hopefully making me a more compassionate and understanding person and a better doctor and a better person. I don't think I would do it any differently again.
Um, and Bernie, Rachel Patton asked about the fundraising efforts for the Jeep, but I think you've covered that beautifully, and that's been a very successful fundraising endeavor. And then finally, we have a really lovely warm message in here from a friend of yours, Sister Marian, called Mark Blaney. And Mark would like to say, greetings from Moncton, New Brunswick, Canada. I have fond memories of working with you in Kabanga. I was there from 1983 to 1985. You may remember that I had a particular interest in little babies back then, and I since pursued neonatology on my return to Ireland, and I'm still looking after little babies today. Maria, my good wife and great midwife, and I say hello. We remember Thomas too, and many others, especially Sister Opportuna, and hi to Sister Maria Borda, my classmate. And that's a message from Mark Blaney.
Thank you, Mark. I saw his name on the list, and I said I was delighted because I've had no contact. So thank you, Mark. It's good to hear from you. Thank you.
Okay, and that wraps up the questions to you, Sister Marian. And again, thank you to Dr. Mangan for such an excellent interview. And I'd like to reintroduce you back to Professor Michael Keane, our Dean, who will conduct the medal presentation and conclude the proceedings this evening.
On behalf of the MGA, I would now like to present Sister Marian with her Distinguished Graduate Award. Thank you again for joining us, and special congratulations to Sister Marian, and sincere thanks to Dr. Bernie Mangan for conducting such an interesting and lively interview, and to you for all the questions that our audience submitted. We hope you all enjoyed this important occasion, and we look forward to welcoming you to the third event in this award series, which will take place on Thursday, the 25th of March, when the award recipient will be Dr. John Donoghue from the class of 1967, who's a retired consultant nephrologist here in Dublin. We'll be in touch with the invitation to the final award event in this series in due course. Good night.